Welcome back to 1965 Washington Quarter, the coin that changed American coinage forever. $1.9 million. What if one of the most ordinary-looking quarters in your pocket was actually a piece of American coinage history that millions of people overlook? The 1965 Washington Quarter is not just another old quarter. It represents one of the most important turning points in the history of U.S. coins, because 1965 was the first year the United States began producing Washington quarters made from a copper-nickel composition instead of the traditional silver alloy. That single change transformed the quarter forever. So before you throw an old 1965 quarter into a vending machine or spend it without a second thought, stop and look closely. Today on Hardest Penny, we're taking a detailed look at the 1965 Washington quarter, its history, composition, condition, potential collector interest, and the details that could make one example more desirable than another. $1.9 million. 1965 Washington Quarter. The 1965 Washington Quarter is one of the most fascinating coins in the Washington Quarter series because it marks the transition away from silver. Before 1965, U.S. quarters were made primarily from 90% silver and 10% copper. But rising silver prices and increasing demand for coins created serious problems for the United States Mint. People were beginning to save or remove silver coins from circulation because the metal itself was becoming valuable. In response, the United States changed the composition of the quarter. Beginning in 1965, Washington quarters were made from a copper-nickel-clad composition. Instead of the traditional silver alloy, the new quarters used layers of copper and nickel surrounding a copper core. This change made the 1965 quarter historically significant, even though millions were produced for everyday circulation. One of the first things collectors notice about the 1965 Washington quarter is the absence of a mint mark. That is important because the United States Mint did not place mint marks on circulating coins from 1965 through 1967. Therefore, if you find a 1965 Washington quarter without a mint mark, that is normal. It does not automatically mean the coin is rare or missing a mint mark because of an error. The obverse features the familiar portrait of George Washington facing left. Above his head is the word Liberty, while the date appears below the portrait. The phrase, "In God We Trust," appears on either side of Washington's portrait. On the reverse is the traditional American eagle design, surrounded by inscriptions including United States of America, E Pluribus Unum, and quarter dollar. For many people, the most exciting feature of a 1965 quarter is its composition. If you compare a 1964 Washington quarter with a 1965 quarter, you're looking at two coins that are very different despite appearing almost identical. The 1964 quarter was struck in 90% silver, while 1965 quarter introduced the copper-nickel-clad composition. This creates an important distinction for collectors. A normal 1965 quarter should not be treated as a silver Washington quarter simply because it is old. The 1965 date is the first year of the clad quarter era, and the coin's composition is one of its defining characteristics. Another important point is that not every 1965 quarter is automatically valuable. Large numbers were produced, and many examples circulated for decades. Most circulated coins show scratches, contact marks, discoloration, and wear. These coins are usually much less desirable than examples that have survived in exceptional condition. Condition is one of the biggest factors collectors consider. Look closely at Washington's hair, cheek, jaw, and the raised areas of the design. On the reverse, inspect the eagle and surrounding details. A heavily circulated quarter will have noticeable flattening on these high points. A high-quality, uncirculated coin can retain much sharper details and original mint luster. The surfaces are equally important. Hold the coin under a light and tilt it slowly from side to side. A coin with original mint luster can show a distinctive movement of light across the surface. If the quarter has been polished or cleaned, its appearance may be unnaturally bright or covered with fine hairline scratches. Never clean a potentially collectible 1965 quarter. This is one of the most important rules for beginners. Cleaning may make a coin look brighter, but it can permanently alter the original surface and reduce collector appeal. If the coin is dirty, leave it alone and research it first. The 1965 quarter is also interesting because of the historical circumstances surrounding its production. During the 1960s, the United States experienced significant demand for coins. Silver prices were rising, and silver coins were increasingly being hoarded. The mint needed a practical alternative that could be produced in large quantities without relying on silver. The copper-nickel-clad composition became that solution. The change was not limited to quarters. Half dollars and dimes were also affected by changes in composition during this period. The 1965 quarter, therefore, represents a major chapter in the transition of American circulating coinage. Now, let's talk about errors. This is where coin hunting becomes especially exciting. During the minting process, mistakes can sometimes happen. A coin might be struck off-center, have a clipped planchet, experience a die break, or display another legitimate minting abnormality. If you find something unusual on a 1965 quarter, don't immediately assume it is a valuable error. Many strange-looking marks are actually caused by damage after the coin left the mint. Scratches, dents, flattening, machine damage, and environmental effects can create unusual appearances. A genuine mint error should be evaluated based on how the minting process works. For example, an off-center strike will generally show a clear displacement of the design relative to the planchet. A clipped planchet has characteristics consistent with a blank being improperly cut before striking. These details can help separate real errors from ordinary damage. Another interesting possibility is a transitional error involving the wrong composition. Because 1965 was the transition year from silver to clad coinage, coins with incorrect compositions can be especially fascinating. However, these are not something you should assume exists simply because the date is 1965. A suspected wrong planchet or transitional error requires careful testing and professional authentication. Weight can also provide useful information. A standard clad quarter has a different weight from the earlier silver version. If you believe your 1965 quarter has an unusual composition, weighing it with an accurate digital scale could be a helpful first step. But weight alone cannot prove that a coin is a rare error. Professional testing and authentication may be necessary. Another factor is strike quality. Some coins may show sharper details than others. Collectors seeking high-grade examples can be very selective about contact marks, luster, strike sharpness, and surface preservation. A coin that has survived more than half a century with excellent surfaces can be much more interesting than an average circulated example. The date itself also gives the 1965 quarter historical importance. It is the first regular year of the clad Washington quarter. That makes it an excellent coin for collectors who enjoy the story behind American money. Even if a particular example is not rare, it can still be an important addition to a collection focused on the history of U.S. coinage. When evaluating one, use good lighting and magnification if necessary. Examine both sides carefully. Check the date, lettering, portrait, eagle, rim, and edge. Look for unusual shapes or features that appear to have originated during the striking process rather than from later damage. If your coin appears exceptionally valuable, don't rush to sell it based on an online claim. Research comparable coins and, if necessary, seek an opinion from an experienced numismatist or professional grading service. Certification can be especially useful when dealing with suspected major errors or very high-grade coins. Remember that online asking prices can be misleading. Someone may list a 1965 quarter for hundreds or thousands of dollars, but that does not mean the coin is actually worth that amount. Real market value is better established through documented sales and comparable examples. The 1965 Washington quarter is ultimately a coin that tells a story. It tells us about rising silver prices, changing economic conditions, the increasing demand for circulating money, and the evolution of American coin manufacturing. It marks the moment when the familiar silver quarter gave way to the clad quarter that Americans still use today. So, could your 1965 Washington quarter be worth more than 25 cents? Most ordinary circulated examples are not rare treasures, but a high-grade specimen, a legitimate mint error, or an authenticated unusual composition could make a particular example much more interesting to collectors. The biggest lesson is simple. Don't judge a coin only by its face value or appearance. Learn its history, understand its composition, examine its condition, look for genuine minting characteristics, and never clean a coin before you know what you have. The next time you find a 1965 Washington quarter, turn it over in your hand and remember that you are holding a coin from one of the biggest transitions in American coinage. It may be common, but it is far from boring. This is Hardest Penny, where we search ordinary coins for extraordinary stories and potential treasures. Keep checking your quarters, keep learning, and always look twice before spending an old coin. You never know when a small piece of change might reveal a fascinating piece of American history. Welcome back to 1979 D Washington quarter. Could this coin be worth more than 25 cents? What if a coin you have carried in your pocket for years could be worth far more than its face value? Imagine finding a Washington quarter that looks ordinary at first glance, but after a closer inspection, you discover that its condition, mint mark, or unusual characteristics could make it much more interesting to collectors. Today on Hardest Penny, we're taking a close look at the 1979 D Washington quarter, a coin that millions of people have probably seen without realizing there can be important details hiding in plain sight. So before you spend that old quarter, take a moment to examine it carefully, because sometimes the difference between an ordinary coin and a collectible coin comes down to condition, striking quality, and the smallest details. 1979 D Washington quarter. The 1979 D Washington quarter was produced at the Denver Mint and carries the familiar D mint mark on the obverse side, near the bottom. At first glance, the 1979 D quarter may not look particularly rare. In fact, most examples found in circulation are worth close to their face value. However, coin collecting is not simply about finding an old date. Collectors pay attention to condition, surface quality, strike, luster, errors, varieties, and whether a particular coin has survived in an unusually high grade. That is where a 1979 D quarter becomes worth a closer look. The first thing you should check is the overall condition of the coin. A circulated quarter will usually show where on Washington's hair, cheek, jawline, and other high points of the design. The reverse can also show where on the eagle, lettering, and other raised areas. Scratches, dents, discoloration, and heavy contact marks can reduce collector appeal. But a 1979 D quarter that has never circulated is a completely different story. An uncirculated example can retain much of its original mint luster and sharper details. The better the preservation, the more interesting the coin becomes to collectors. Extremely high-grade examples can be especially desirable because finding modern coins in exceptional condition is not always as easy as simply finding the date. The surfaces should also be examined carefully. Look at the coin under good lighting and slowly rotate it. Original mint luster can produce a distinctive cartwheel effect as the light moves across the surface. If the coin has been heavily cleaned, polished, or damaged, that can negatively affect its collector value. Cleaning can leave unnatural brightness, hairline scratches, or an altered surface appearance that experienced collectors can recognize. The next thing to inspect is the mint mark. The D tells us that this quarter was struck at the Denver Mint. The mint mark itself should be examined for unusual characteristics, but be careful not to assume that every strange-looking letter represents a valuable error. Coins can develop marks and distortions from circulation, damage, or contact with other coins. A genuine mint error generally needs stronger evidence than simply looking unusual. Errors are another area that can make an otherwise common coin much more interesting. During the minting process, coins pass through multiple stages, including blank preparation, striking, and handling. Mistakes can occasionally occur. Depending on the type and severity of an authentic mint error, collectors may pay significant premiums. Examples of error categories include off-center strikes, clip planchets, broad strikes, die breaks, and certain striking abnormalities. However, another important point is that age alone does not make the 1979D Washington quarter rare. This is a relatively modern coin, and large quantities were produced. You should not expect every 1979D quarter to be worth hundreds or thousands of dollars. Viral videos and online posts sometimes show extraordinary auction prices without explaining that those coins may have had exceptional grades, certified errors, or other unusual characteristics. For collectors, grading is one of the most important concepts to understand. Coins are generally assigned grades based on their condition, with circulated grades ranging from heavily worn examples to lightly circulated pieces, while uncirculated coins can receive grades reflecting their preservation and quality. Professional grading services can certify coins and assign numerical grades, which helps buyers and sellers communicate about condition. If you discover a 1979D quarter that looks almost perfect, do not immediately clean it. This is one of the biggest mistakes a new collector can make. Never polish a potentially collectible coin simply because you want it to shine. Original surfaces are important, and cleaning can permanently reduce the coin's desirability. Instead, handle the quarter carefully by its edges and store it in a proper holder designed for coins. You should also compare your coin with other 1979D Washington quarters. Look at photographs from reputable numismatic references and auction archives. Pay attention to differences in luster, strike, contact marks, wear, and surface preservation. Comparing several examples can train your eyes to recognize what makes one coin more desirable than another. One fascinating aspect of collecting is that value is not always predictable. Two coins with the same date and mint mark can have dramatically different values because one may be heavily worn while the other is a pristine, high-grade example. A third coin might contain a verified mint error that changes the situation entirely. The 1979D Washington quarter is therefore a perfect example of why you should inspect coins instead of judging them only by their date. Most examples will remain ordinary pocket change, but the search itself is part of the fun. Coin collecting rewards patience and attention to detail. If you find one of these quarters, start by checking the date, then confirm the D mint mark. Next, examine the condition, surfaces, strike, and any unusual features. Use a magnifying glass if necessary, but avoid touching the surfaces excessively. If something appears genuinely unusual, research it carefully before deciding that it is valuable. And remember, the most exciting discoveries are not always the coins with the oldest dates. Sometimes a relatively modern coin can become collectible because of extraordinary preservation or an authentic minting error. That is why collectors continue searching rolls, jars, old collections, and pocket change. So, could your 1979D Washington quarter be worth more than 25 cents? In most cases, probably not by a large amount. A high-grade example or a genuine, desirable mint error could be considerably more interesting than an ordinary circulated quarter. The key is knowing what to look for and understanding the difference between normal circulation damage and an authentic minting characteristic. Before you spend your next 1979D quarter, give it a second look. Check the surfaces, examine the details, inspect the mint mark, and compare the coin with verified examples. You might not have a fortune in your hand, but you could have a fascinating piece of American numismatic history. This is Hardest Penny, where we search for the hidden stories and potential treasures inside ordinary coins. If you enjoy discovering valuable pennies, quarters, and other fascinating U.S. coins, make sure to subscribe because the next coin in your collection could be the one that makes you stop and look twice. What if a quarter sitting unnoticed in your pocket, coin jar, or old collection could be more interesting than it looks? Millions of Washington quarters pass through American hands every year, and most are spent without a second thought. But collectors know that the smallest details can sometimes make a major difference. Today on Hardest Penny, we're taking a close look at the 1998P Washington quarter, a modern coin that may appear completely ordinary at first glance but can still be worth examining carefully. Before you spend one, check the date, look for the P mint mark, study the condition, and inspect the surfaces for anything unusual. You may not have a rare fortune, but you could have a coin with collector interest hiding in plain sight. 1998p Washington Quarter. The 1998p Washington Quarter was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, represented by the P Mint mark on the obverse side of the coin. It belongs to the long-running Washington Quarter series, one of the most recognizable coin series in American history. By 1998, the Washington Quarter had been in circulation for more than 6 decades, and the familiar portrait of George Washington remained one of the most common sights in American pocket change. The first thing to understand about the 1998p quarter is that its age alone does not make it rare. This is a modern circulating quarter, and many examples were produced. Most circulated specimens are generally worth around their face value. However, coin collecting is not simply about age. Condition, strike quality, surface preservation, errors, and certified high grades can all influence collector interest. When you find a 1998p quarter, start by looking at the date. The number should be clear and properly formed. Then look for the P Mint mark near the lower portion of the obverse design. The Mint mark identifies the facility where the coin was produced. Once you confirm that you have a 1998p, the next step is to examine its condition. Condition can make a major difference. A heavily circulated 1998p quarter will normally have visible wear. Washington's hair, cheek, jawline, and other raised portions can show flattening from years of use. The reverse, featuring the American eagle, can also display wear on the highest points. Small scratches, dents, and contact marks are common on coins that have spent years moving through circulation. Now imagine finding a 1998p quarter that looks almost brand new. The surfaces may still have strong original mint luster. The design details may be sharp, and the coin may have very few contact marks. Such an example can attract considerably more attention than a worn quarter. Collectors often seek high-grade modern coins because even coins produced in large quantities can become difficult to find in exceptional condition. One of the most important things to look at is the coin's luster. Under good lighting, slowly rotate the quarter and watch how the light moves across its surface. Original mint luster can create a moving, cartwheel-like effect. This is different from the artificial shine that may result from polishing or cleaning. If you believe you have a potentially valuable coin, avoid cleaning it. A cleaned coin can lose collector appeal because the original surface has been altered. The strike is another important factor. During production, a blank planchet is positioned between dies and struck with tremendous pressure. Ideally, the designs appear sharp and well-defined, but striking quality can vary. Some coins can have weaker details than others. Collectors interested in high-grade examples may pay close attention to the sharpness of Washington's portrait and the details on the reverse. You should also inspect the edge of the quarter. A normal Washington quarter has a reeded edge, meaning it contains a series of raised lines. Carefully examine the edge for anything obviously unusual. However, remember that damage can happen after a coin leaves the mint. Not every strange-looking edge is a mint error. This brings us to one of the most exciting possibilities, mint errors. Errors occur when something goes wrong during the manufacturing process. Depending on the type and severity, authentic errors can be highly collectible. Possible categories include off-center strikes, clipped planchets, broad strikes, die breaks, and other striking abnormalities. For example, an off-center strike occurs when the planchet is not properly aligned with the dies during striking. This can leave part of the design missing and create a noticeable blank area along one side of the coin. The degree of off-centering and the overall appearance can influence collector interest. But there is an important warning here. A damaged coin is not necessarily an error coin. A quarter can be scratched, bent, scraped, or struck against another object after leaving the mint. Such damage may look dramatic, but it does not automatically make the coin valuable. Before assuming the 1998p quarter is a rare error, compare it with reliable examples, and, if the coin appears particularly significant, consider professional authentication. Another feature worth examining is the lettering. Look carefully at inscriptions such as Liberty, In God We Trust, United States of America, and quarter dollar. Small differences in appearance can sometimes be caused by wear, dirt, lighting, or damage. Therefore, collectors should avoid declaring a variety simply because a letter looks slightly different. For someone searching through pocket change, the 1998 P quarter can therefore be a fun coin to keep an eye on. You should not expect every example to be valuable. Instead, think of the hunt as a process of discovery. Search for coins with exceptional preservation, unusual characteristics, and potentially authentic mint errors. If you find a particularly nice example, handle it carefully. Hold the coin by its edges instead of touching the surfaces. Oils and dirt from your fingers can affect a coin's appearance over time. Store collectible-looking coins in holders made specifically for numismatic items. Avoid loose storage where coins constantly rub against one another. If your 1998 P quarter looks exceptionally clean, do not polish it. This cannot be emphasized enough. A shiny coin is not necessarily a valuable coin. Collectors generally prefer original surfaces, and cleaning can leave microscopic scratches or an unnatural appearance. What looks like an improvement to the untrained can actually reduce collector desirability. You can also compare your coin with professionally graded examples. Coin grading provides a standardized way of describing condition. A circulated coin may have substantial wear, while an uncirculated coin retains its original details and surfaces. At the highest levels, tiny differences in contact marks, luster, strike, and preservation can separate one grade from another. The marketplace can also teach you something about value. When researching a 1998 P quarter, do not rely only on asking prices from online listings. Sellers can list coins for almost any amount they choose. Instead, focus on documented sales, reputable auction records, and professionally certified examples. A listed price is not necessarily the same as the price a collector actually paid. It is also important to remember that extraordinary auction results are usually connected to extraordinary coins. A high-grade certified example or a dramatic authenticated error can command attention, while an ordinary circulated coin may remain worth only its face value. This is why headlines claiming that a particular quarter is automatically worth hundreds or thousands of dollars can be misleading. Still, there is something exciting about searching. Every coin gives you an opportunity to practice your skills. The more quarters you examine, the better you become at recognizing normal wear, contact marks, strong strikes, unusual surfaces, and possible errors. So, could a 1998 P Washington quarter be worth more than 25 cents? Most ordinary circulated examples will not bring a huge premium, but a coin in exceptional condition, a rare and authenticated error, or another legitimate collectible characteristic could make an individual example much more interesting. The real treasure is knowing what you're looking at. Instead of automatically spending every quarter, take a few seconds to inspect the date and mint mark. Look at the surfaces. Check the edge. Study the strike. Search for unusual characteristics. If something seems genuinely different, research it before making any assumptions. The 1998 P Washington quarter may not be one of the oldest coins in American history, but it represents an important period in U.S. coinage. It carries the classic Washington design that Americans had known for generations, while standing immediately before the dramatic changes of the state quarters era. So the next time a 1998 P quarter lands in your hand, don't dismiss it immediately. Turn it over, examine both sides, and look closely at the details. Most likely, it will simply be a quarter. But every collector knows that the fun begins with asking one simple question: what if this one is different?